This is Joseph Carpenter. Today is February 28th, 2025, and I'm interviewing Mr. Jim Cromwell. This interview is taking place at the Heritage Center of Cherokee County, and it is sponsored by the UTA Department of History and Geography and is part of the Texas Veterans Project. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed, sir.
Thank you.
Tell me about your early life growing up.
Well, my early life growing up, you mean really early?
As
Okay.
early as we can go.
The earliest that I can remember is moving with my family up from Bunkie, Louisiana to Mobile, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably about 2, maybe 3 at that time. My dad was a watchmaker and jeweler, and he had decided to move from Bunkie, where he had a job, to putting in a jewelry store in Mobile, and that's the reason we left.
Where were you born? What city were you born in?
I was born in Lufkin.
Lufkin. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about your parents? You said your dad was a watchmaker?
Yeah, Dad was a watchmaker and jeweler. Mm-hmm. He had been raised by an aunt of his in Carthage, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was one of 10 children in Plain Dealing, Louisiana.
Mm.
Plain Dealing is about 25 or 30 miles north of Shreveport. Dad was born in Logansport, Louisiana, about the same distance south of Shreveport. They met in college in Natchitoches,
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana.
Okay. So you said you moved to Mobile.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, I was awfully young, and we lived in town, up in town, for the first couple of years that we were there. And all I can remember there was that I had a big backyard to play in. I didn't do much else. I do recall, though, that my dad would come home from work for lunch each day, and I would go to about a half a block to the bus stop where he got off to walk with him back to the house. I recall that during the summertime especially.
Mm.
Then we moved from there after World War II was ending to Carthage, Texas. That's where he grew up.
I see.
And that's
what caused you to move to Carthage?
Well, my dad, who was 25 or 26 at the time, was drafted in late 1940. Would have been early 1945.
Okay.
And he sold his business, and we sold the house. And just before he got called up, the president of the state of the country said, if you're 25 or older and have children, we can't draft you.
Oh.
So there he was at age 27, I think, with 2 children, and nothing to do. So we had to move.
I see. Okay. Did you have any siblings, any brothers or sisters?
Had one brother. He was
Okay.
born 4 years after I was,
Mm-hmm.
and he was named Jerry. That
Mm-hmm.
was his name. He was born in Mobile, but he was the only. Well, I was the only one born in Texas.
I see.
It turns out I was born in Lufkin.
Uh-huh.
My dad and mother were both born in Louisiana,
Right.
and my brother was born in Alabama.
Mm. And what was your relationship with your brother like?
I think we did pretty well. He was, 4 years younger than I, but we did pretty well. Had a good time. It was somebody to play with.
Right.
And that was the good part.
Right. How were your school years? Your early school years, elementary school. What was that like?
Early school years, I started in Carthage,
Mm-hmm.
where we had moved to from Mobile. And in the first grade, I was there the whole year. The second year, my dad had an Indian motorcycle business in Monroe, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And that summer, before the second grade, I went up there with him, or went over to there with him, in about the middle of August, so I could come back in time to start his second grade in Carthage.
Mm.
Well, as we came back from Mobile, we had a wreck around the first part of September out near Mobile. Well, not Mobile, closer to Shreveport.
Uh-huh.
And I was unconscious for probably about 3 weeks at least.
Oh my, really?
It was a bad hit. Hit. Destroyed the car, and that's all I know about that.
Right. Wow.
That was it. I got in the car and we were riding around, and suddenly I woke up in the hospital a month later.
That's amazing. So what was your childhood like from elementary school through high school? What was it like?
Well, it's hard to say. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
My mother let me do whatever I wanted to do, basically, and Dad let me do more than that.
Right.
And played cowboys and Indians a lot.
Uh-huh.
Went to movies a lot.
How were you in school?
I was a good student, I think. Yeah, I was a
Mm-hmm.
good student. I was able to get into second grade almost halfway through the school year,
Wow.
because when the accident happened, school had not started. It started about 2 days later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was in the hospital for about 6 weeks
Mm.
with head injury and a broken leg.
Wow.
When I got out of there, I was still in even at home in Carthage. I wasn't allowed to get out of the house.
Oh.
I could walk back and forth from front to back of the house, but not get out of the house. By the time I got out, it was almost Christmas.
Oh my goodness.
So when I got into second grade in Carthage, half of the year was already gone, school year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Did you already know the other kids that were in school with you?
most of them I knew, I think, but don't ask me to name their names. That was a long time ago.
Sure. Right.
The thing is, though, that when I started second grade, for me, I was probably ahead of the second graders, the other second graders,
Mm-hmm.
because my mother had taught me all through the time I was in the hospital.
Oh.
She was a school teacher for a while when she first got married,
Right.
and her sister was a third grade teacher in Plain Dealing, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
So mother could get the teaching parts from her sister from Shreveport, Plain Dealing, and taught me second grade with third grade books.
Oh. Wow.
So I was pretty well ahead of the third graders or second graders when I started second grade in Carthage.
Was it awkward for you going back to school in the middle of the year?
Not especially. I
Okay.
don't think. No, it was not especially.
So then later on, what activities were you involved in school? What did you play sports? Were you a musician? Anything like that?
No. I just went to school and studied, learned all I could, went back the next day and learned more.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So any hobbies or interests apart from school?
Not really at that time. No. No. Just I liked to go to school. I enjoyed that. I liked to read, and that took up all my time.
Right. So were there any, other than this car accident that you mentioned, were there any other incidents?
We moved from Carthage to Longview when I started third grade.
Oh, okay.
So I was in first and second grade in Carthage, but my first grade started in Longview.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there the first semester. And at that time, my dad was working there in Longview, and he moved his working business to Rusk, and we moved to Rusk in just after Christmas of my third grade year.
Okay. And so how difficult were those transitions for you as a child, moving from one city to another or town to another?
Relatively difficult, I guess, for the first couple of times, but I got over it pretty quickly in third grade, and from third grade on, I was in the same class all the way up through the 12th grade.
Okay.
But I had to learn the third grade teacher and all the students pretty quickly to get up to grade.
Right,
And
to be able
that
to
was all
adapt.
it was to it.
Did your mom, so you mentioned she was a school teacher early on. Was she a stay-at-home mom for the rest of that time?
Yes, she was a stay-at-home mom. Yeah.
And was your dad always, was he always a watchmaker?
Well, he was a watchmaker and jeweler. Yeah, for until I graduated from high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And where'd you go then after high school? What did you do?
well, let me first of all say that high school was in Rusk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And after I'd finished high school, I moved to Tyler and went to TJC there.
Okay. Tyler Junior College.
Yeah, Tyler
Okay.
Junior College. And that I accumulated enough money to pay the tuition and enough to also pay home and room and board for the first year.
Okay.
So I moved up there for the first year, and that's where I stayed.
How did you accumulate that money?
Working in radio primarily.
Really? Tell me about that.
In radio and newspaper.
Okay.
Here in Rusk,
Mm-hmm.
the owner of the newspaper hired me to be one of his disc jockeys.
Oh.
And so I worked that after school in the afternoons. I would go to school from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and then I'd go on air from 3 o'clock until 5:30, or when we signed off at 6. And the next morning I'd get up and go to school.
Wow.
And then on the weekends, I was on the radio primarily the entire day for Saturday and Sunday.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Did you get to talk on the radio, or did you just?
Oh yeah, I was a disc jockey, and I was an announcer. I was the only one on the radio, as a matter of fact. The only live name on the radio for most of those years. Yeah.
Did that make you a community celebrity here in Rusk?
It could have been. I didn't look at it that way.
Uh-huh.
But I know when I met my wife, she knew who I was, and her family knew. They were from Jacksonville, but at that time I was on the Jacksonville radio too, so
I see.
they knew who I was at that point. Yeah.
So you went to Tyler Junior College for that first year you mentioned, and you saved up your money to do that. What happened after that? After that first year?
For the second year, I had to work on the weekends, so virtually all of Saturdays and all of Sundays, I would work to earn enough money to pay for the next week and a half or 2 weeks of going to school.
See, yeah.
But I lived in Rusk,
Mm-hmm.
so I would commute from Rusk to Tyler every day.
Oh goodness.
And
How long a drive is that?
that's about 45 minutes.
Okay. Okay, not too bad.
Not too bad. No.
Yeah. And so you commuted rather than living in Tyler.
Couldn't afford to stay in Tyler.
Right,
So
okay.
just stay at home. Yeah.
All right. And what were you doing as a job on the weekends? Were you still working as a disc jockey?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how long did you do that?
And I worked for KEBE in Jacksonville and KTLU in Rusk.
Okay.
So I would be one day I would be at KEBE, and the next day I'd be at Rusk. And believe it or not, it was hard to keep up with where you were.
Right. So how long did you do that?
Just for that year,
Okay.
as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tyler Junior College is a 2-year college.
Yeah.
So you went your 2 years to Tyler Junior College, and then what did you do after that?
Well, didn't have any money anymore, so I had to stay at home for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to work for the guy that owned the station here in Jackson, in Rusk. And the summer after my second year of college, I was sent to Livingston to work at the radio station there in Livingston.
Okay.
For 5 of the 7 days each week, I was again the only name you heard on that, only sound you heard on that radio station.
Wow.
I'd get up in the morning and sign it on, work all day, sign it off in the afternoon.
Mm.
And on the weekends, I'd go back to come back to Rusk and wash my clothes, and get ready to start the next week.
Right.
It was
Were you playing music?
yeah. I was playing music, and we also had hookups to newscasts on the radio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like network newscasts.
news, yeah. Mhm.
And this is all in the 1950s, am I right?
That was in the late 50s, right?
Okay.
Mhm.
And what was your major at Tyler Junior College? What were you going for?
Actually, I got my degree in sociology.
Okay. Okay. And why did you choose sociology? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. When it came time to graduate, they said, "What was your major?" I said, "I have no idea, but I will figure it out."
Okay.
So I went back and looked at all my information that I had from my junior college and senior college. I had more hours in sociology than anything else.
I
So I said
see.
sociology.
Okay. Just like that.
Worked for me.
Yes. Yeah, I guess so. When you decided to go back to college to finish your 4-year degree, where did you go?
Well, I went back to living in Rusk, and I would commute daily to Nacogdoches.
Okay.
And I graduated from Nacogdoches with a degree in sociology
Okay.
after 2 years there and 2 years at TJC.
And what did you do after college?
Joined the Navy.
And had you met your wife by this time?
Yes, my wife and I met, we met early on in that third year.
Okay. Was she at SFA with Stephen F. Austin also?
I met her in Jacksonville where she
Okay.
lived.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I lived in Rusk, so it was easy for me to go to Rusk, and we dated that away. I would, when I was home on the weekends, I would drive back and forth from Rusk to Jacksonville. We'd go to the movies and various things, but stuff. Yeah, that was how that worked out.
Now, doing sociology at Stephen F. Austin, did you just decide to continue that just because you'd already had the credits toward that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had hours scattered so far across the whole range of where I could go.
Right.
I just took the most that I had in one class and said, "That's it." I could have been Germany. It could have been geography. It could have been anything. But
Sure.
I said sociology was the better of the group.
So you said after college you joined the Navy. Why did you decide to join the Navy?
Well, primarily to keep from getting drafted. At that time, at that age, I could have been drafted just in a heartbeat. And I decided I'd rather join and pick what I wanted to do than be drafted and be told what to do.
Right.
It sounds funny, but that's the way I was in those days, and I haven't changed much.
And were any of your family members in the military? Did anybody influence you to join?
No, my brother didn't go, my dad didn't go, my mother didn't go. Two of my mother's brothers were in the Navy in late World War II.
Okay.
And after that, nobody close in was in the family was in the military.
So you just decided one day to up and join the Navy.
Absolutely.
To avoid the draft.
To avoid the draft, yeah. Let's be honest about it.
Right.
I didn't want to get
And this is what, early 60s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Vietnam had not flared up real big up to
Not
this
really.
point, right?
Not really. This was in 63, 64,
Okay.
and it really hadn't gone crazy. I joined the Navy in 62, I guess it was.
When you joined the Navy, where did you go for training, and what was your job?
Okay. Well, I was assigned to flight school. I think I asked for that, and I was in flight school, class 62, and we graduated in October of that year, and from there I went to advanced intelligence school in New York, in D.C. My wife and I had married at that time. We married the day I graduated from pre-flight school and got my commission. That was a big day. It was a big day.
Yes.
But about a month later, we went to Washington, D.C. to intelligence school there.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Now, you chose military intelligence,
yeah,
is that correct?
well, aviation intelligence.
Aviation intelligence,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And why did you choose that above being a pilot or a navigator?
Well, because my stomach didn't like flying. I tried it, and it didn't like it very much. So I
Right.
said, well, heck, I can still be in the aviation unit, but keep me on the ground. And that's what I did.
What does a photo interpreter do?
My job was to take photographs. I'm sorry, to look at photographs that have been taken by the aircraft, and figure out what's there
Okay.
and what it does there and why it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I learned at intelligence school.
So the best example that people might be familiar with is the missiles on Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. A photo
Yeah.
interpreter would
Yeah.
have seen those there.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so, as a photo interpreter, and after your training, where did you go?
I was assigned to a squadron in Sanford, Florida.
Okay.
It was a heavy attack squadron.
Mm-hmm.
What does heavy attack mean? Well, heavy attack means that they had aircraft capable of carrying nuclear weapons.
I see.
And I was assigned to one of those squadrons.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the squadron was RVAH-5. Now, why is the R there? Because just after I arrived there, we were also assigned a mission of reconnaissance. And we
Okay.
became a photographic as well as a bombing squadron.
I see.
And I was the senior intelligence officer in the squadron.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you there at Sanford?
We flew out of Sanford for about, well, I was in the squadron. The squadron moved once. but
Okay.
I was in the squadron for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But we made 2 deployments while I was in the squadron. One was to the Western Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
and the one was to the Mediterranean.
I see.
And then after that, the squadron moved up into Georgia, and shortly after that, I got off active duty.
And you, in the Western Pacific you were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
your flight crews were flying into Vietnam, is that correct?
More or less. Let me tell you about that. We got there quite a few months before the actual bombing of Vietnam started. But we got there in November of '64. And my squadron was flying missions over South Vietnam and over the near boundary between South and North for November, December, January, February, and up into March, as a matter of fact.
I see.
We flew regularly photographic missions there. My job was to tell them where to go, and when they brought me pictures back to look at it and see what we saw on the letters, and tell them, don't go there again, or go there again and take some more pictures, or whatever.
Were these on carriers?
Yes, I was on the Ranger. The squadron had gone to Ranger.
Okay. Is that was the name of the ship, the
Yep.
USS Ranger?
USS Ranger. She was located in San Francisco. That's where she was docked.
How did working with imagery and intelligence shape your perspective of military operations?
Well, it put me in a very interesting position because I would usually know before a lot of people did what was on the ground that we were looking for and where it was. And then secondly, it was my job to tell the attack pilots who were going to get there bombing and strafing where to go, what to look for, and what it would look like. So that was my position. I was in the middle there, learning what was there, teaching those who had to go there what was there.
I see.
and we lost one airplane.
Mm.
We lost one, and it wasn't from combat. It had gone out on a training mission and happened to crash.
Oh my!
But we lost two people and one aircraft between on that 9 months of activity we were there.
Mm. What was the most difficult part of that job?
I think the most difficult part was taking the photographs that were brought back to me,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could find where the targets we were going to have were,
Right.
and at the same time where the anti-aircraft was going to be, so I could protect the pilots that were going in to take more pictures or drop more bombs.
That's a lot of pressure on a young man.
Well, it kept me awake.
After that 4-year period,
Mm-hmm.
you got out of the Navy, active duty, and stayed in the reserves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What did you do after you got out?
Went to law school.
Why'd you go to law school?
Don't know exactly. To tell you, here's what happened. It was getting close for my time to get out of active duty to arrive, and I didn't know what to do. The civilized people out in the world don't use intelligence very much, and that's all I knew. So a friend of mine said, "Why don't you go to law school?" And I said, "Because I don't want to be a lawyer." And he said, my dad went to law school. He hadn't practiced a day, but he said it was the best thing he ever did. So I said, well, okay, I'll look into it. So I sent off requests for information to 3 or 4 law schools in the south part of the USA. One of the I got an answer from was UT, and UT said, "Come on down. We'd love to have you."
In Austin.
In Austin, yeah. So that's what happened. I got off active duty, transferred to the reserves, and we moved to Austin. My wife finished her 4-year degree in August of that year, and I finished my law degree 3 years later, or 2 years later. She taught school during that period of time. Somebody had to buy the groceries.
Right.
That was her job.
Right, okay. What was that transition like for you from the military to going back to school? Was it difficult?
It really wasn't all that difficult. It was not that different, really. I was doing things that most people don't do in both jobs. And
I see.
I enjoyed them a lot. They were both a lot of fun. I enjoyed learning things.
Then after law school, what did you decide to do?
Go back on active duty.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Well, when I got out of law school, I started looking around for a job as an attorney. And I found that the attorneys in Austin for newly caught lawyers were paying about half what the Navy would pay me as an attorney on active duty. Not being terribly ignorant, I said, I'll go back to active duty and make the full pay.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife said, fine, and we both quit our jobs, and I went back on active duty, and she got a job teaching school.
You were then part of the Judge Advocate General's Corps.
Right.
In the Navy.
Right.
And what was that like?
Well, you got a chance to try a lot of cases, and it's hard to say because I had never done any civilian law practice.
Mm-hmm.
My first law practice was in the Navy, and that's all I knew.
So what kind of cases were you doing?
Oh, theft, assaults, things like that.
Were you primarily a defense attorney or a prosecuting attorney?
If you put in the prosecuting side, you didn't defend, and vice versa.
I see.
And so for a while, I was put into prosecuting. Later, I was pulled out of that and put into defense.
Did you have a preference?
Not really. It was fun both ways.
What'd you like about it?
Well, you learned a lot. You had to learn the law to make it work. And then you had to teach the law because you were teaching, that's how you used it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what was so fun about it. I enjoyed it.
What was the transition like from photo interpretation to the Navy Judge Advocate General's Corps?
Well, it wasn't a problem, but it was a good transition because I went from interpreting photographs to interpreting the law and teaching the law and using the law. And that was, and of course, I had to know a little bit of law about the civil law where I was living, and I was living in England part of that time. And you had to know the Navy law also and how those two jived with each other.
I see.
Very interesting.
I see. And how long were you in England, do you remember?
About 4 years.
Okay. Was that probably the best time as the JAG Corps officer?
Well, I wouldn't call it the best, but it was awfully good. It was really nice. My wife and I, she didn't work then. I worked, and we managed to make some trips to Italy and Russia and a lot of places. And Lingen was nice. I liked Lingen a lot.
Mm. So how did your service influence your understanding of the legal system and your approach as a lawyer?
Well, the law is the law, whether it's Navy law or English law or U.S. federal law or state law, you still got to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed learning it. And I was able, luckily, I say luckily, at least I felt like I was able to use it and use it across each one's, independently or crosswise.
And how long did you stay in the Navy?
I was in the Navy for 23 years total. The first 8 I was on intelligence, and the last 15 I was in the JAG Corps.
After retiring from the Navy, what led you to come back to Rusk?
Well, Rusk is where I was raised. Rusk in Jacksonville is where Helen was raised, my wife. So Cherokee County was the ideal place for us to come back. Mm-hmm. And I made contact with a couple of lawyers in Jacksonville and one in Rusk, and decided that I should come back to Cherokee County and establish myself there as a civilian lawyer with one of those groups.
And you may have already answered this question, but what differences did you find in practicing law in the Navy versus practicing law as a civilian?
When you practice law in the Navy, you have to practice law, military law, but you also have to know the civil law in the area where you're living. And in England, that was interesting because I had to learn English law and U.S. civil law and Navy law.
Right.
And I had to use all 3 of those, and that was very interesting.
When you came back, how did you find a job?
Well, before I got off active duty, I called a couple of places in Jacksonville, here in Jacksonville, law offices there, just to see what they had and if they could use an attorney, fresh out of the Navy. And one of them said, sure. One in Rusk said, sure. So that's what happened. We moved back to Rusk, and I went to work in that law firm.
Did you specialize in any particular part of the law?
Not exactly. I would say no, because when you're practicing law in a small town, you can't afford to practice just one kind of law. They'll bring you all kinds of cases. Mm-hmm. And so that's no, I can't say that.
Did you have any particular cases or types of cases that you preferred over any other?
Well, I really liked all of them.
What were the biggest challenges that you faced as the DA in Cherokee County?
working 7 days a week, about anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day.
Oh my.
That was kind of tiring.
Mm-hmm. And did you have a staff, or did you have an assistant?
Yeah, I had an assistant attorney and had a staff of 1, 2, 3, 4. Had one attorney and an investigator and 3 other people working for me.
How did your experience in both the military and civilian law shape your approach to being a prosecutor?
It didn't. It was, you were still using the law to do what's right. And it was still 12 hours a day working.
Do you think that, having been in the Navy, and particularly you mentioned England as being an important time for you, do you think that experience overall made you a better prosecutor?
I'm not sure better, but it gave me a broader realm of practice and interest and understanding of what goes on. It was good that I did that. I think I would probably not known nearly as much about how to practice either one of those if I hadn't practiced all 3 at the same time.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Can you share a case or a moment during your tenure as the DA that was particularly impactful?
Yeah, we had a case where a guy got killed when I was DA now, and they couldn't find the body. It was floating around in a river, and suddenly one day, one of the sheriff's deputies had been told that there might be a body at a certain point in the river, and he went out to look for it, and he found it. And I said, I asked him in the trial, I said, well, once you realized what it was, what did you do? He said, well, I got in the water, and I walked out to it, and I brought the body back. And I said, okay. And that's it. That the jury picked that up pretty quick,
Right.
And it didn't have to say much more than that. That was it.
Just that it was as simple as that.
As simple as that. But we got the body back, and all of a sudden we started knowing what happened, and who did it, and we convicted a bunch of them.
How did you figure it out?
Well, first of all, finally know exactly who the guy was, and you knew who his friends and family were, and you knew who his almost friends were.
Right.
And so we started looking around, and we found things that kept pointing to a particular point, and we found the person that did it, but that way. We had some information, threw it away. Some more, threw it away. Had some more that headed toward where we were going. And it took us a few months to do it, maybe 6 months to get it done.
Tell me a little bit about your wife.
Well, my wife's a nice lady, and I met her in a triple date that a friend of mine's friend in Jacksonville had set up. And I wasn't invited but I realized that there was 3 girls and 2 guys in the group. And I said, well, if one of the ladies doesn't mind, I'll take a spot. They said, okay, fine. So I did. But it was not with my wife, not with her. It was with one of her friends. But I met her there. That's how I met her. And at triple date, she was with somebody else, but we had a chance to talk. And after that, we started dating each other.
How did that come about?
Well, I just asked her when we got home, I said, can I come to see you tomorrow or next week or whenever it was? And she said, sure, come on by.
So y'all each shed yourself of the dates that you had.
Those dates were only dates for that time.
I see. So it was just very casual.
This was in June, by the way.
Okay.
And I dated with Helen for the next 5 or so months. And in December, I went to see her mother at where she was working one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Desi, would you be upset if I married your daughter? And she said to me, no, I'd be glad for you to.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
I don't know how you're supposed to do this. You know?
Right.
It was my first and only time to do it. But I said, this is what I'm going to do anyway,
Right.
just to see what happens. And that's the way it went. I don't think Helen knows that.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah.
but her mother did, and she said, sure, I'd be glad for you to.
That's great.
So now that was in December, and we got married 2.5 years later.
So how long have y'all been married altogether?
Oh, all together, we got married in 64. Yeah, 64.
Mm-hmm. And 2025 now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
61 years?
Yeah, we've been married 61 years. Yeah, yeah.
How did your naval career and your career as an attorney and a district attorney affect your life as a whole? Did it make your marriage life more difficult? Did you find that things that you would like to do were maybe sometimes you were unable to do them for time's sake?
Well, it wasn't always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It was always fun. Practicing was fun, and living in different places. We've lived in D.C. and we lived in Florida and California, Texas, London. We've visited lots of places we wouldn't have been able to had I not been on active duty, and we all enjoyed it. We both enjoyed it a lot. Just had a great time.
What values have guided you through your career?
What values?
What kept you moored morally to your own convictions?
Truth, for one thing. And staying with a job until you got it finished.
Mm.
And making certain when you finished it, it was what you wanted it to be.
Looking back, how do you think your military and legal careers have shaped your legacy?
Well, I think pretty well. Looking back, I'm known by a lot of people in Cherokee County that I don't know. Now, I say that, and I've been saying that now for about 6 or 8 years, but suddenly I realize why they know me and I don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
As the district attorney, every 6 months you call together about 50 people, out of which you pick 30, out of which you will pick 12 for a case.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for many, many years.
Right.
And they all knew me.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them, everyone of that 71st group would know me. I would know the last 6 if I was lucky for about 6 months, and then I'd go to the next 6 months and know them. So I know a lot more people than I think I know, but a lot more know me than I think know me. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you had it to do all over again, your naval service and your career after the Navy, would you do it the same way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't imagine it being better. I mean, it was fun. I learned a lot. I did a lot of different things. I was sufficiently paid, you know, and I got the feeling that I was doing the right thing. Now that sounds pretty harsh for a lawyer to say that, but I got the feeling that I was doing the right thing, and the right thing may have been just what I wanted to do, but you know, when you're the DA and you can put somebody in prison for breaking the law, you've done the right thing.
Mm-hmm. You're volunteering at the Heritage Center of Cherokee County.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide to volunteer in a historical society?
I like history.
Mm-hmm.
I've always liked history. And before this was turned into the museum it is now, even then I was looking at historical things here in Cherokee County.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I just love it.
How long have you been doing this? Do you know?
20 years.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe.
Wow.
More than that. Don't know. Been a long time.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add to this interview that we haven't discussed?
Well, I never expected to be a radio announcer. I never expected to be a naval officer. I never expected to be a prosecutor. And I've done all that and enjoyed all of that. It's been a good life.
Well, I appreciate you agreeing to be interviewed. It's been a pleasure.
Well, you're welcome.
It's been our honor. Thank you so much.